Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So let's go straight in with John Shanker. Hello to you, John. What's your question for Mr. Gove?
Good evening, Mr. Gove. I feel that the Leave campaign is spreading project lies. Yes, project lies with no concrete evidence on what will happen to the economy if we vote to leave. I feel your campaign is more to do with a bunch of politicians wanting to further their own political careers. Tell me, Mr. Gove, why should we trust you?
Well, John, I think that you should trust the case that I'm making rather than any individual politician. This debate is far bigger than the fate of any individual politician. It's about all of us in this room and all of us at home. It's about the sort of country that we want to see. And what I believe in is hope. I believe that last night, I'm afraid what we heard was depressing, and it was an exercise in trying to scare you into not following through what you know in your heart to be right, which is that Britain is a great country, that we can achieve amazing things if only we trust the next generation. And I think that whatever decision we take, leave or remain on June the 23rd, the one thing that's clear to me is that if we in the future have confidence in ourselves, then there is no limit to what we can achieve. And I think that the depressing litany of projections about World War III and global Brexit recession that we hear from the Remain side is not the sort of approach that we should take into the future. Whereas on our side, in the Leave campaign, what we believe in is unlocking the potential of the British people. And I think, John, that there are all sorts of reasons to believe that our country, the fifth largest economy in the world, with the most impressive armed forces, with the best publicly funded health service, with so much to offer, that is Project Hope, and it's what I hope people will vote for on the 23rd.
I don't think so. I still think it is project lies. I still think you're continuing to peddle lies about the 350 million. We all know that it isn't that figure, and it's just a matter of lies.
Yeah, just to clarify that. Yeah, can we just clarify that, Mr. Gove? I mean, as far as this £350 million figure is concerned, that's what's on the side of the battle pass. That's what your team is saying is sent to Brussels every week. Even Mr. Farage, who I spoke to last night, said that he wouldn't use that figure. Is he wrong, or are you?
Well, on this occasion, I'm afraid that Nigel is wrong. The truth is that we give actually more than £350 million to Brussels every week. Now, we do get some of that money back, and it's important, and I was making this point to Faisal earlier, to acknowledge that in a spirit of total transparency. We get some money back through a rebate, and it's also the case that the European Union spends some money in this country on things like farming subsidies and also supporting universities. But the truth is that we cannot count on that rebate. That rebate is decided by other countries. It's not up to us. And one of the problems that we've had in the past is that the rebate has been whittled away. I fear that if we vote to remain, that rebate will only be reduced further. If we leave, however, we can take control of all of that money. We're not reliant on anyone else's generosity for the rebate, and more than that, the money that is currently spent by the European Union, we can spend on our priorities. And that means we can continue to support farmers, continue to support scientists, but we will also have, in addition, an extra £10 billion to spend on our priorities, like the NHS. That's got to be sensible.
Do you therefore agree that the figure of 350 million was wrong, and it was actually a lie which you put on the bus and told everyone?
No, I think the figure of 350 million is a fact. But of course, with all facts, you provide broader context and people see. The critical thing, though, is it's control.
Yeah.
That money is controlled by the European Union. And if we vote to leave, we can take back control of that money, and we're no longer in the hands of people who may not always have our best interests at heart.
The gentleman there in the blue shirt with his hand up. Keep your hand up and then we can see, we can get our boom. Yeah?
Yeah, sorry. I just got an interview with Chris Graney with Laura from the BBC, said we pay into the EU 10 billion a year. Where's that 350 then, and why is he wrong and you're right if he's part of your
This is going to haunt you, this figure, Mr. Gove.
Well, because he said we pay
OK, we've got it, thanks.
No, I think...
Back, and they were his words, so
Of course, it's the same thing. It's the difference between the total amount that we hand over and then what we get back. If at the end of you know, any exercise we get some money back, of course that's great. But we cannot rely on that money being given back in the future. So at the moment, we hand over nearly £20 billion, and then we get £10 billion back.
17.8 billion, and we don't send it all, is an argument, but we'll have to leave it there for now, because we want to bring in Sam Shabir. Hello to you, Sam. What's your question?
Hi. Hi.
Hi. Go on, Sam.
So I think it's disappointing to see the Leave campaign use such divisive tactics on the issue of immigration. One of the greatest things in our society is multiculturalism. Do you regret that the Leave campaign has been focusing on the so-called problems with immigration?
Well, Sam, I agree with you. I think one of the great things about Britain is that it's a hugely successful, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-racial society. That's a really good thing. And one of the ways in which we've built that success is that in the past we've been able to control migration, so it's in the benefits of everyone. I'd like to see migration continue in the future, but I'd like to see it controlled. And the only way that we can control migration, indeed the only way that we can be truly fair to everyone who wants to come here, is to leave the European Union. I think it's wrong that any one of the 450 million citizens of the European Union can be at the front of the queue and can come here automatically when there are people from countries with which we have deep ties, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the nations of the Caribbean, who can't come here in the same way. I think that is discriminatory, and I think by leaving the European Union, we can actually have a truly inclusive, non-racist immigration policy which works in the interests of everyone in this country.
Want to come back on that one, Sam?
It's sort of confusing as a voter because you're saying what you just said, but then you have people like Nigel Farage coming out yesterday saying that, you know, he doesn't like how society's changing and how society's looking very different. And comments like that surely ostracise people. So do you stand by what he said?
I can't agree with that. I think we're really lucky to live in one of the most amazing cities here in London in the world, and I think that we're uniquely fortunate to live in the best country in the world. And it's because I think this country is so great, and because I believe its people are so wonderful, that I want them to control who comes here and the numbers who come here. I trust them to be generous, wise, humane and right. At the moment, control of our immigration policy isn't in the hands of the British people. I think that we should take back control so that people like you and others can debate and decide how many people can come here so that we can attract people here who can strengthen our economy and, yes, provide a safe haven and refuge to people fleeing persecution. That is the British way, and the only way we can ensure we have that policy is if we vote to leave the European Union and take back control.
Let's bring in Andrew Carnegie, should we? Andrew runs his own small business. He's making parts for intensive care units. Andrew, what's your question, please?
Mr Gove, in general elections, parties present detailed manifestos on how they propose to manage the economy if elected. Why hasn't the Leave campaign presented a detailed economic plan?
Well, Andrew, first of all, thank you for the work you do. I mean, I think it's hugely to your credit that you're committed to producing products that will improve the lives of people in pain and suffering. But more than that, we have outlined in significant detail things that could change as a result of leaving the European Union. One of the things that I've explained is that we would be able to take away VAT on fuel if we left the European Union. One of the problems about being in the EU is that you can't, once VAT has been slapped on a product, take it down to zero. That means that everyone, the poorest, pensioners, pays 5% VAT on fuel to heat and light their own home. I've said if we leave the European Union, we can take that VAT off, and that means the very poorest in our society can be better off. I've also outlined that if we leave the European Union, then we can invest additional millions in our National Health Service, and it's also the case that those of us in Vote Leave have outlined that if we leave the European Union, we can tackle the rogue European Court of Justice, which not only imposes laws that mean that multinationals can dodge taxes here, but is also responsible for weakening our border controls so that we cannot keep out criminals and we cannot kick out terrorists. There have been detailed proposals that have been put forward about how our life could be better, but the ultimate question is, whatever view you take of our future, whether or not you think it's right to have VAT on this product or to lower taxes on another product, You can only have those decisions enforced by people who are accountable to you if you vote to leave the European Union so that we can take back control.
Yeah, I think, Andrew, we were chatting earlier on, and Andrew's point is he wants the Leave campaign to tell him when you're planning to publish your economic plan. Do you have a date for that?
We've already published details of our economic plan, and we'll be saying more in the course of next week. But a critical thing about this is that the Leave campaign is not an alternative government. The Leave campaign are a group of people who believe that the government that we elected a year ago should take this country out of the European Union. The point of a general election is to choose the government, and the point of a referendum is to give that government instructions. So when you vote to leave, what you'll be doing is sending a clear instruction to this government that you want them to take back control of VAT, and you want them to take back control of health policy and take back control of our borders.
OK, so, Andrew, did you miss the economic plan, or did you not read it? Or?
Well, I think the answer is there is no economic plan. I've got 2 points, if it's OK to make those. The first one is that it appears to me that you're asking people to vote for a divorce and sort the financial settlement out afterwards. And that makes no sense to me. You know, there's lots of people who go through divorces, and the last thing they want to do is try and sort the money out afterwards. You negotiate before. And without having a plan in place and having put the effort into that plan, it makes no sense to me. And with all due respect, Mr Gove, it appears to me that it's almost like a First World War general. You're waving the flag, you're saying over the top men, but you have no idea what's on the front line or what the casualty rate will be in the conflict that's to come.
Well, it's certainly an arresting image, the First World War image. But ultimately, what I'm putting my faith in is the ingenuity, the creativity and the strength of the British people. Many of those who are arguing that we should remain are trying to frighten you by saying that it would be impossible for Britain to succeed. They're saying that Britain is too small, too poor, and we're all too stupid to be able to succeed on the outside. I comprehensively reject that. I think that we would be economically stronger, capable of forging trade deals with other countries. It's a fact that the European Union is a declining share of the world's economy. It's a fact that the European Union is growing slower than every continent in the world, apart from Antarctica. It's a fact that if we vote to leave and we take back control, then we can shape an economic policy which is in our interests. Britain's been strong in the past and can be strong in the future if we work as an independent, self-governing democracy. It works for America, for Canada, for Australia and New Zealand. It can work for us again if only we liberate the talents of the British people.
OK. Let's bring in Jimmy Oliwala, should we? And Jimmy is a third-year engineering student, Cambridge University. Good for you, Jimmy. What's your question?
Good evening, Mr Gove. You won your campaign in the Scottish independence referendum, ensuring that Scots continue to have some of their laws set by Westminster. Why can't you accept that some of our laws should be made by a democratically elected body in Europe for the collective good of all countries?
Well, as you know, I was born and brought up in Scotland. I consider myself to be Scottish and British at the same time, and I'm proud of our United Kingdom, its history and its traditions. And one of those traditions is that there is, every 4 or 5 years, an election in which you can decide who the government is. And everyone here knows that our Prime Minister is David Cameron. Some of you voted for him, some of you voted against him. But how many people here know who the 5 presidents are who run Europe? 5 presidents. Can anyone here name all 5 of them? I don't think you can. I don't think anyone in the street can. Harriet Harman couldn't. The truth is that the European Union is not a democracy. The European Union is run by people in the Commission and in the Court whom none of us ever elected, whom scarcely any of us can name, and who none of us can sack. The most powerful symbol in our democracy is not Parliament, it's the removal van that arrives every 5 or 10 years outside Downing Street and says, the British people, Prime Minister, have told you you're fired. We cannot do that. None of us can fire the President of the European Commission or the President of the European Court or the President of the European Central Bank. And I think that is wrong. One of the reasons that I went into politics is that I believe I should be accountable for my decisions. But as long as I'm a member, or this country is a member of the European Union, there are all sorts of decisions that are taken at a European level that I can't alter. That's undemocratic, unaccountable, wrong. It needs to change, and it will, if we vote leave on the 23rd of June and take back control of our democracy.
Lady here at the front. Just wait for the microphone, madam, if you would.
Good evening, Mr Gove. Mr Cameron offered this referendum to keep the Tory party together last year and to buy off UKIP. He won an election he didn't expect to win, and which is now being examined for election fraud. If some of those seats are found to have been wrongly won, not won at all, that would mean this referendum is being held on a totally false premise. It would be illegal. What happens then if we end up out and we find that some of those seats were fraudulently won?
Well, I don't know the details of these allegations, and they're being investigated. And as Faisal pointed out, as Lord High Chancellor, one of the things that I mustn't do is comment on legal proceedings. But there's a broader point here. The Prime Minister said that it's been more than 40 years since people have had a chance to decide whether or not we should be members of the European Union. And he's giving all of us a chance to vote on this question. I think it was brave and right of him, once he had that majority, to honour that promise. Nobody can say that he's doing anything other than sticking to his word and being true about what he believes. On that basis, I think it's up to all of us to decide what we think is the right thing to do. This is an historic moment, and it's a moment when, actually, whatever you think of Conservative politicians, the real power rests with the people. The real power rests with all of you. And I think that is a humbling, but also a wonderful moment.
OK.
Because you will decide.
OK. You're slightly getting off answering the question there, so let's try again with Jason Hislop, should we? Hello, Jason.
Yeah, Mr Gove. I find the Scottish independence referendum to be really nasty and divisive. So if the rest of the UK votes to leave the EU, but the majority of people in Scotland remain, is another Scottish referendum inevitable and the breakup of the Union?
No, I don't think it is. A majority of people in Scotland are against a second referendum, and a majority of people in Scotland are against independence. And I don't think if the people of the United Kingdom vote to leave one union, that the people of Scotland will vote to leave another. And I also think that if we vote to leave, it will be a vote of confidence in all of us, the United Kingdom, together. The Scottish referendum, you're right, had its tough and difficult times, but it was also an exercise in democracy. And the majority said, we believe that the United Kingdom should survive. Whatever the result of this referendum, it will be democracy in action. And I think this is an opportunity not just for us to have democracy in action, it is an opportunity for us to strengthen and to reinvigorate our democracy, because our democratic traditions in Scotland, Wales, England and Northern Ireland are what have enabled us to be a beacon globally, setting an example, being a force for good, and making sure that we are a great place for everyone to live.
Let's move away from referenda, should we, and bring in Lynn Chandler here on the front row. Lynn is a part-time historian. She owns an apartment in France. Hello to you, Lynn. Thank you for joining us. What's your question?
Thank you. Good evening. As Kate says, I own a small retirement apartment in France. So my question is, what will be the consequences of a leave vote for the hundreds of thousands of Brits across Europe who own homes?
Whereabouts in France is your apartment?
South of France.
In the south of France.
South coast.
Yes. No, I've got friends who live in France as well, and one of the things is that many of them are people, or they have homes in France. Many of them are voting in favour of Britain leaving the European Union because they think it's in Britain's interest, and they also know that there are international laws and international rules that mean that if you're legally and ordinarily resident in another country, then even if your home country votes to leave the European Union, all your rights, all your privileges are carried on and are respected. So the one thing I would say to you, and indeed to everyone, who enjoys living and who enjoys the prospect of retirement, which I suspect is many years hence, enjoys thinking about retirement, the one thing is that your investment will be safe and your future will be safe, whatever the decision on June the 23rd.
And someone like, someone like the French government would respect those laws.
They would have to respect those laws.
I mean, someone like the Spanish PM this week has said something completely different about a negative impact on British citizens, which seems wholly unfair.
I agree that there are one or two foreign politicians who have tried to play the fear card in this debate, but it's perfectly clear the legal basis is that if you're ordinarily resident and you've got the legal right and title to a property in another European Union country, then that will be respected and you can enjoy your retirement there, and I hope have the opportunity to come back and see your children in this country, and they can enjoy sharing a holiday with you.
OK, so you're absolutely 100% sure that if we choose to leave the European Union, that France, Portugal, Germany, Spain, the rest would totally abide by supporting people like Lynn and the 118,000 other Brits who are living overseas?
Absolutely. I think people will, across the European Union, respect international law. Of course they will. And I think a critical point here is that we and European Union nations, if we vote to leave, instead of having a fractious relationship, which, let's be honest, we do have at the moment, we can then move to being friendly neighbours. And I think far better than being a difficult lodger in a house that we didn't design is being a great neighbour in a home that we can call our own. And for that reason, I think we will actually have better relations with other European nations if we, instead of trying to prevent them doing what they want to do with their future, say, your destiny is in your hands, our destiny is in our hands, we've taken back control.
Gentleman here in the blue shirt. Hold on a second, sir. Here we go. Go.
Spain has threatened to close the border with Gibraltar. What would you do?
I don't think that...
If they do, what are you going to do?
I think as soon as the votes are in, on June the 23rd and June the 24th, if we voted to leave, then we're in a different world as far as relations with these countries are, and I think that they will recognise our democratic vote. I don't think it's the case that Spain, having fought so hard to establish democracy, is now going to show disdain for democracy and for the people of Gibraltar. And one of the things about the position of people in any country where the British flag flies is that they know that their interests are best protected by a strong and confident and independent Britain. So for that reason, I think that the day afterwards we'll find that some of those politicians and others who've been warning us and perhaps feeding Project Fear will respect a democratic vote in the home of democracy. OK, let's bring in Geoffrey Wellington. Hello to you, Geoffrey. Geoffrey is worried about his family's future. He works at Port Talbot. I think you can probably guess what he does. Geoffrey.
Hiya, Michael. I've been an electrician at Port Talbot Steelworks for 26 years. And the feeling there is that they're going to decide our future after the EU referendum. How should I vote to protect my job? And that's on behalf of everybody who works in the steelworks in Great Britain.
Well, my heart goes out to you and all your colleagues in the Tata Steelworks in Port Talbot. I know that it's central to a great community and that the people who work there have been doing a fantastic job against the odds, and it's terrible that your fate hangs in the balance. But if we vote to leave the European Union, one of the things that we can do is to provide support for industries that are going through difficult times through no fault of the individuals working in them. At the moment, inside the European Union, there are specific rules that prevent us providing that emergency support and assistance in the way that we might want to. So one of the things that I would say is, of course, there are many, many issues to weigh up. But if we vote to leave the European Union, one of the things that we can do is that we will have additional flexibility to help those industries that really need it when that difficult day comes and people like you and your colleagues are facing problems that are none of your own doing.
Thank you.
Just to clarify that, would Tata Steel be saved if we were outside the European Union? I
think we would be, if we were outside the European Union and had been outside the European Union, we would be able to support industries that were going through difficult times. Now, it may be the case that...
So you would offer state aid to support Tata Steel?
We could in certain circumstances.
As a Conservative?
Well, one of the things I think of as a Conservative is that it's really important to recognise that the free market is not a god. It's really important that we try to do everything possible to make industries competitive, absolutely. But there will be difficult times when industries go through strains and difficult periods, when the government can and should step in. Not on every occasion, not at every time, but from time to time. And that's what being a democracy is about.
Okay.
If we vote to leave, we can take back control of the support that we give to industries, and if we feel that it's right at a given time, then we can do that. Thank you, Mr. Gove. Let's bring in Todd Cooper, should we? Todd is a student at the University of Birmingham. Hello to you, Todd. What's your question?
Hello. I'm a medical science student, and I also volunteer in my local hospital. So I think, like everyone, I'm worried about the NHS. Up to 80% of trust leaders have said that they're worried about staffing should we leave the EU. So wouldn't a vote in leave to the EU cause a staffing crisis in the NHS? I absolutely don't think so. Everyone who's currently working in the NHS, whether they've come from EU countries, come from abroad, or were born and brought up here, their jobs will be protected. Indeed, their lives should be easier. At the moment, the NHS faces two big problems. It faces growing demand because we've got an ageing population. Well, that's a good thing, and we shouldn't want to do anything about it. But it also faces increasing demand because we have uncontrolled free movement from the European Union
here. And that has meant additional pressure on accident and emergency and additional pressure on GPs as well. And one of the concerns that I have is that the European Union has a plan to allow 5 new nations with 88 million people, Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia and Turkey, into the European Union. If that happens, then inevitably the fact that our NHS, which is unique in Europe because it's free at the point of delivery, wonderfully so, will come under additional strain. So I think that our NHS will be stronger if we leave the European Union and then invest some of the money that we can get back from Brussels in making sure that those who really need it get the superb care which the NHS offers
OK, let's bring in Anne Dakin, should we? Anne is a single parent and she wants to be able to help her 27-year-old son. Anne, what's your question?
Hello, Mr Gove.
Just here, over here.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. I'm worried about my son. I brought him up alone, so all of my money, I wasn't a benefit, I worked. I was lucky enough to work all the time. All of my money's gone on bringing him up. I can't help him moving forward. He's 27 years old, he's living at home with me. I love him, but I want him to leave and stand on his own two feet.
Know the feeling.
He works for himself, he's a self-employed builder.
What's your question?
How can leaving the EU help him to buy his own home?
OK. Well, the first thing I want to say is single parents do a fantastic job.
Answer the
question,
fact
if
that
you've raised your child on your own in that way is inspirational. But if we leave the European Union, one of the things that will be easier for him to do is to find a job and find a home of his own. It's not just the National Health Service that suffers as a result of uncontrolled free movement. Uncontrolled free movement has also driven wages
down. Just to clarify, we're slightly running out of time. I'm going to have to cut you to the quick now. Are house prices going to go up or down as a result of us if we leave the EU?
I think that if we leave the European Union, it will be easier for young people to get on the housing ladder. You can't say... It will depend on individual parts of the country. It will depend on individual parts of the country. But the critical thing is that there will be less pressure on housing overall. One of the problems that we have at the moment is there is a lack of supply of housing. And that's put house prices up
that's because
for those at the bottom of the market.
During the Conservative government.
Sorry?
Third fewer have been built during the Conservative government.
Well, as it happens, house building under the Conservative government has been higher than under the last government. Put that to one side. Not enough houses have been built overall. And one of the concerns that I have is that, unfortunately, as a direct result of uncontrolled free movement into this country, it is more difficult for young people, including your son, to get onto the housing ladder.
OK, slightly running out of time. Steve Bradshaw? Steve, what's your question?
Mr Gove, you and Boris have led the Leave campaign. When Mr Cameron steps down in the future, are you considering a leadership bid?
Oh, there we go. There's the leadership question.
Steve, I can tell you I'm absolutely not. The one thing I can tell you is that there are lots of talented people who could be Prime Minister after David Cameron, but count me out.
You're seen as the poster boy for the Conservative backbenchers, the Brexiteers.
Well, I'll tell you...
There's a lot of votes on those backbenchers, Mr Gove.
I'll tell you this. The one thing I would recommend is whatever posters you put up on your wall, do put one up of me. I'm not the sort of person that you want to have when you wake up on your bedroom wall. I'll tell you that. No, the truth is that, of course, people want to speculate about personalities. But this issue is far more important than that. This issue is about the future of our country and what sort of nation we want to be. And I think that instead of succumbing to the pessimism of the Remain side, we should be optimistic and hopeful about our potential. And I think that whoever leads this country in the future, they will have more freedom to do what's right if we've left the European Union, and then they have control of all of the levers that can supercharge our country and make it the best country in the world in every regard.
You have accused Mr Cameron of telling ghost stories to children in the past, with all the negative spin.
OK.
Are you promising the world?
OK, I think we are sadly running out of time, but thank you very much indeed, all of you, for your questions. That's our last question tonight, Mr Gove.
Oh, well, thank you, Kay. And can I just say thank you to all of the audience? This debate is so important. It really matters to all of us what we decide. And I think, instead of the pessimism of the Remain campaign, we have an opportunity to think of the next generation. If we have faith in their talent, in their generosity, in their hard work, we can, if we leave the European Union, ensure the next generation make this country once more truly great.
Thank you very much indeed.
you very much. Thank